The Galactic Council chamber was a grand display of power, towering pillars, holographic banners, and alien diplomats from 100 worlds. They gathered in their arrogance, discussing the human problem, as if humanity were a minor inconvenience rather than an emerging force among the stars. Their expansion is uncontrolled, rumbled Speaker Vorlon, his scaled fingers tapping against the polished stone table. They colonize faster than any species we've encountered. Commander Threx of the Crawl Dominion scoffed. They are insects. Let them spread. When the time comes, we crush them. A few voices raised concerns, recalling humanity's military history. But the majority dismissed them. After all, humanity had not waged war on the Council's worlds. They had played diplomats, explorers, too careful, too restrained. To the Council, this was weakness. So when word came that a human envoy was arriving, it was decided that a lesson must be taught. A public display. A reminder that the Council ruled the galaxy, not some upstart species. The envoy, Adrian Kane, walked alone into the chamber. He was dressed simply, no guards, no weapons. His sharp blue eyes scanned the room, unreadable. You stand before the Galactic Council, Vorlon declared. We have much to discuss. Kane inclined his head, the barest hint of a smirk at the edge of his lips. Indeed. He never saw the attack coming. A silent signal from Threx, and the room erupted. Energy bolts lanced through the air. Kane twisted, but the first shot slammed into his shoulder, spinning him around. Another struck his side. He hit the ground hard, pain lancing through his body. The Council watched in silence as guards surrounded him, weapons humming. He was supposed to scream, to plead, like so many others had before. But Kane only laughed. Low, quiet, almost amused. He coughed, blood staining his lips, but his eyes gleamed with something cold and deadly. That, he murmured, was a mistake. A ripple of unease passed through the room. Even Threx frowned. Kane lifted his head, still smiling despite the pain. You wanted to put humanity in its place, he said, voice steady. Now you'll see what happens when you push us too far. A pause. A long, dreadful pause. Then, before anyone could react, Kane activated a small device on his wrist. Every security system in the Council chamber flickered. The lights dimmed. Emergency alarms blared. Outside, in the void of space, something was moving. And for the first time, the Galactic Council began to realize what they had done. The med bay was dim, sterile, and silent except for the steady hum of machines. Adrian Kane lay motionless, his body a roadmap of fresh wounds and half-healed scars. The attack should have killed him. They had meant to kill him. But they had failed. You should rest, a voice said. Kane turned his head slightly. His second-in-command, Colonel Voss, stood at his bedside, arms crossed. The man's face was unreadable, but his eyes held a quiet fury. Kane exhaled slowly. Report. Voss hesitated, then relented. Council refuses to acknowledge the attack. They're calling it an unfortunate incident. No apologies. No reparations. They think we'll let this pass. Kane's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. A cold stillness. You already knew they would, Voss said. Kane sat up, wincing but unwavering. Yes. A moment of silence passed. Then Kane spoke again, quieter this time. Mobilize the fleet. Voss didn't blink. Orders. No more warnings, Kane said. They wanted to make a statement. Now we make one of our own. Within hours, human warships moved like shadows through the void. Silent, invisible, a fleet of ghosts creeping toward the heart of the Galactic Council's power. The attack was neither loud nor chaotic. It was precise. Surgical. The Council security grid went dark in an instant. A dozen key facilities lost all communications. Before anyone could react, human strike teams infiltrated their most fortified strongholds. Kane led one of them. Even wounded, he moved with the ruthless efficiency of a man who had lived too long in war. His team swept through the corridors, neutralizing defenses, disabling security measures with a precision that spoke of months, no years, of preparation. This had never been about peace. Kane had anticipated this moment from the beginning. The final chamber doors hissed open, revealing a row of high-ranking alien officials, frozen in terror. And at the center, Commander Threx. Kane stepped forward, weapon in hand, his steps unhurried. Threx's mandibles clicked in barely contained panic. You wouldn't dare," the alien rasped. Kane smiled. "You thought we wouldn't." A single shot rang out. Threx collapsed. The message was clear. This was not diplomacy. This was not a warning. This was retribution. And for the first time, the Council understood what it meant to make an enemy of humanity. The Galactic Council chamber was unrecognizable. What had once been a symbol of authority now reeked of desperation. The air was thick with tension as alien delegates shouted over one another, panic clear in their voices. The unthinkable had happened. Human forces had struck the heart of their power, and they had done so with terrifying precision. "They've taken out our primary security hubs. Entire fleets have gone dark," a Zelvari ambassador hissed, his tendrils quivering. Speaker Vorlin's usual composure had cracked. His voice was strained. "We underestimated them." A hollow feed flickered to life in the center of the room. Reports flooded in, key outposts abandoned, planetary defenses rendered useless, entire colonies surrendering to human forces without a fight. "They're not just attacking," a trembling diplomat whispered. "They're dismantling us." Across the chamber, an older council member, one of the few who had fought in past wars, leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you know who Adrian Kane is?" Silence fell. The younger members looked at him in confusion. "He's the reason the Shulian warlords don't exist anymore," the elder continued. "They were a warrior race. Conquerors. They outnumbered humanity 10-1. Kane ended their war in 3 days. 3 days. They still call him the Butcher of Epsilon 9. Murmurs spread through the room like wildfire. Another screen came to life, this one broadcasting from the occupied Corthan system. A high-ranking Corthan general, once a staunch opponent of humanity, stood before a human officer. He removed his insignia, knelt, and surrendered. His voice was grim. "We will not fight them. We know what happens to those who do." The Council had always viewed humanity as cautious, restrained. They had mistaken that restraint for weakness. Now, they were watching an entire empire unravel because of one man. A desperate vote was cast. An envoy would be sent. A plea for negotiations. A chance to salvage what little dignity remained. But when the message was sent, the response came quickly. A single transmission. A familiar voice. Calm. Measured. Unforgiving. Negotiations? No. Unconditional surrender. The line went dead. The Council had never feared a single being before. They did now. The war never truly began. Wars required battles, drawn-out conflicts, desperate last stands. This was something else entirely. By the time the Council realized the extent of their mistake, it was already over. Human forces moved like phantoms, striking at critical points with such precision that resistance became meaningless. Planetary governors surrendered before their defenses could be tested. Entire fleets powered down without firing a shot. The message was clear: there was no victory to be found, only survival under new terms. The Council collapsed within days. Some of its members fled into the far reaches of space, hoping to escape the inevitable. They didn't. One by one, they were found. Some were executed. Others were forced to kneel before the very species they had once dismissed. Adrian Kane stood in what had once been the Council's grand chamber. Now, it was nothing more than a relic of a failed empire. Alien leaders gathered before him, their expressions ranging from anger to resignation. "You thought humanity was weak," Kane said, his voice even, unwavering. "You thought our patience was fear, our diplomacy was submission. You learned otherwise." No one spoke. No one dared. "We are not conquerors," he continued. "We do not seek to rule through fear. But let this stand as a reminder: humanity bows to no one." The silence that followed was absolute. In the weeks that came, a new order took shape. The Galactic Council was no more, replaced by the human-led Galactic Federation. Systems that had once been governed by arrogance and corruption now fell under the firm, disciplined hand of humanity. There was peace, but it was a peace built on the ashes of a lesson learned too late. Kane never called himself a ruler. He did not sit on a throne or declare himself emperor. He simply ensured order. And when order was challenged, he reminded the galaxy why no one made the same mistake twice. On the bridge of his flagship, he gazed at the holographic map of the stars. The old divisions were gone. There were no more petty alliances, no more fragile treaties. Only one power remained. And the galaxy belonged to humanity now.